2021. Senate Education Committee will come to order. Today, we have a continuation of what we started back on January 6th. On January 6th, we had a hearing about getting kids back in school, heard from parents and some educators from around the state, different areas, about the challenges and the problems and the issues that they're facing. And they're significant, of course, and the impact on our children mentally and academically and physically even. So last Wednesday, the commissioner and the department was good enough to come over and share some information about not only budgets and COVID dollars, but also their summary and their plan to get school. It was not exactly where we needed to go, but we were glad to have them and listen to what they had to say. This is a continuation of this effort to kind of lay a groundwork to get kids back to school and also help the department in any way we can and assist the schools and the kids in any way we can to do just that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to hear from various leaders from various parts of the state, school board members, superintendents, to talk about things we can do here at the legislature and at the department to make their lives easier going forward, to help transition back all kids back to school, and ways we can perhaps help them save money and find ways to free up dollars so they can use them other places. So today is about touching the kind of the tip of the iceberg on innovation and some things we've learned that we can stop doing or continue doing that'll help out kids in schools throughout the state of Minnesota. So with that, we have on this agenda about 5 different testifiers and then 2 from Serve Minnesota. Members, you also have in your packets, you should have received electronically some written testimony from Anoka Hennepin and a couple others as well. So with that, we're going to start. First up is Ms. Hinton. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee for the opportunity to come before you and discuss education, innovation, and the flexibility needed to meet the needs of all of Minnesota's children in our public schools and their families. I am Deb Hinton, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. Some of you will remember my predecessor, Gary Amoroso, who is now retired. I was most recently the Superintendent of North Branch Area Public Schools, a position I held for 13 years. My comments today and that of those you will hear following me are supported by the Minnesota School Boards Association, the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, Schools for Equity in Education, and the Minnesota Rural Education Association. 3 superintendents and a school board member will share the successful work they are engaged in with their staff and school boards on behalf of their students. I do want to, however, acknowledge that creating learning models that reach all children during the time of this pandemic has been challenging at best, and we are deeply concerned about our students and their families who have been struggling during this time. Still, we are proud of our educators and all staff who within 6 days last March pivoted to a learning model few had ever been engaged in before, and who have since demonstrated incredible flexibility in moving from in-person learning to hybrid learning to distance learning, and thankfully in so many districts back to in-person learning. It is my pleasure to now introduce you to the Superintendent of Rochester Public Schools, Mr. Michael Munoz, who will talk about the flexible learning year program in place in his school district. Superintendent Munoz.
Thank you. Michael Munoz, Superintendent, Rochester Public Schools, Chair Chamberlain, and members of the Senate Education Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to.
Well, hang on here a second. Zoom gets in the way here. Thank you, Ms. Hinton, for the introduction. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and your position for the record, Mr. Munoz. Thank you.
Yes, Michael Munoz, Superintendent, Rochester Public Schools. Chair Chamberlain, members of the Senate Education Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon about Longfellow Elementary, which runs a 45-15 calendar, which means students attend 45 days and then they have 3 weeks break, back to school for 45 days, then back to 3 weeks break. This is a calendar that we have to seek permission every 3 years from the state to run this type of calendar. Today, I'd like to share with you some of the benefits that our families are saying with this type of calendar. They are telling us that they're seeing greater retention of skills by their children. This type of calendar provides a balanced life, ability for their children to self-regulate with frequent breaks, and increase stamina for learning. Some of the benefits that staff are reporting with this type of calendar is the ability to attend professional development opportunities over their breaks, well-balanced personal and professional lives, feeling rejuvenated and excited about their craft throughout the entire school year, and greater opportunity for reflections and action planning in regards to their practice and student growth. I'd like to share with you just some of the benefits that Longfellow has seen over the years with this type of calendar. Since 2010, Longfellow students in 4 ethnicity groups, Hispanic, Black, Asian Pacific Islanders, and White, have outperformed state proficiency rates in the same 4 groups 95% of the time on MCA reading and math assessments. Longfellow also received the Minnesota Campaign for Achievement Award in 2013 for outstanding Latino and Black student performance. They also received the Minnesota Business Partnership Futures Award in 2011, representing Greater Minnesota for reducing the achievement gap. More recently, in 2019, their EL population has performed higher than our district and the state in progress towards targets as measured by MCA testing. Also in 2019, their EL population has performed higher than our district and the state in reaching or exceeding their targets as measured by MCA testing. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of the benefits of the 45-15 calendar that we're seeing at Longfellow Elementary.
Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that. Don't go anywhere. There might be some questions for you. Members will have questions after the next 3 testifiers, if you'd like. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Next on the list is, I'm sorry, I might damage this name, Superintendent. Your last name is OC, St. Louis Park, Superintendent, St. Louis Park Schools. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Aston Osai.
Osai? Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Osai, Superintendent, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Chamberlain. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, members of the Senate Education Committee. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes this afternoon to discuss the need to extend the distance learning option for school districts into the 2021-2022 school year. As you are aware, currently all districts, regardless of their learning model, must offer an equitable distance learning option to all families who choose not to attend in-person learning due to medical risk or any other safety concerns. While this was new to us in March and initially presented a number of challenges as we attempted to implement an equitable distance learning option, over the past several months, we've really improved our practice in this area, and we have continued to refine the facilitation of learning in this model based on the feedback we've received from students and parents and guardians. Certainly, we recognize that distance learning for many students in our district and across the state continues to be problematic, and we're following all of the current guidelines to move to a less restrictive model for students at both our elementary and secondary levels. I firmly believe that in every challenge, there are opportunities. And what we have found through this experience, that there are some students in our district and across the metro area and state for that matter, who are thriving in distance learning. Many students who are thriving in this format have cited feeling less stressed in the school environment because they're not needing to focus on or deal with the social interactions, which in the past has interfered with their ability to focus on learning. In addition, we're seeing students in grades 2 through 7 demonstrate growth as measured by the NWEA MAP test. Specifically, we're seeing reading growth for Black and Brown students in our district. And in these instances, the growth in this area has been flat or declining for the past couple of years. We recognize that there's a lot more research that we need to do in this area to better understand what's happening. And while students who have been flat to declining for the past few years are now growing in this distance learning format. But what we do know is that, our brick and mortar school settings have not always been kind to students of color, as we think about the disproportionate number of students of color who are suspended or expelled every year, or the disproportionate number of students of color who are placed in intervention or remedial types of courses and programming. And not to mention all of the experiences that students of color have, some intentional or some unintentional, where there are aggressions that they experience on a daily basis. I really believe that allowing districts to continue to offer distance learning for students next year would give districts the ability to explore what is working in this environment and continue to redesign and improve our in-person format to better meet the needs of all learners. This experience has really gotten us excited as an organization to develop an online learning option for students in our district. And as you may be aware, the process to become an online provider at the state level is very consuming and requires, in many instances, dedicated staff to go through the application process. This year, St. Louis Park Public Schools, along with many other districts, were not able to dedicate the staffing needed for that process completion, as we've been immersed with planning connected to delivering effective instruction in our ever-changing educational delivery model due to COVID. I believe allowing districts to continue to offer distance learning for students next year would give us another year to work through the process of becoming an online provider, and also allow for continuity for students who are currently thriving and are interested in continuing in this educational delivery model next year. I believe it's important more than ever to create space for districts to be innovative as they look for ways to meet students' needs in online and blended learning formats. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share our experience with distance learning this school year, and thank you for your leadership, as nothing about the past 12 months has been easy. And as I mentioned before, in every challenge, there's an opportunity, and I firmly believe that we have an opportunity here with the continuation of school districts having access to distance learning for all students in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Osai, and I agree. There's always some opportunity there somewhere. Just look a little bit. We do have one question from a member. Senator Isaacson, did you want to?
I can wait.
Okay. All right. Thank you. With that, next up is Mr. Berg, Superintendent, Farmington Schools. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Once I get off mute, my name is Jason Berg, and I'm the Superintendent of Schools for Farmington Area Public Schools. Thank you, Chair Chamberlain and committee members, for this opportunity. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of that door that can open to allow districts some of those opportunities that Superintendent Munoz and Superintendent Osai talked about, to kind of tailor personalized plans that fit their district and their students. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but Farmington Area Public Schools was part of an original innovation pilot project along with Spring Lake Park that began in 2012. The original idea was to allow districts to move beyond traditional educational practices and develop truly innovative learning plans specific to the needs of the learners within their district, identify barriers to the learning design, and then work with the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education to mitigate those barriers. Even though the how that both districts went about it looked different, the focus was on the same elements of learning design: high quality instruction for each student and personalized learning supports for each student. Now, I think it's important that we kind of understand our context around innovation. True innovation is understanding context, needs, as well as strengths, and doing things differently to get us wildly better results. The act of innovation is an act of creation, designing something new and doing things in ways that have not been done before. While innovation is generally not tied to the past, it is informed by our past experiences and inspired by the current experiences of the learners, parents, and communities we serve, and our desire to improve those experiences and ultimately our results. Innovation does not improve on current practice, it takes it to the next level. It makes a break, takes a leap, and then sets an entirely new course. Simply espousing innovation does not make it happen. It requires some processes and an encouraging culture. Our work centered around unleashing our staff as professionals, untying and inspiring them with a common vision of a learning environment that truly serves each student well, and one that authentically personalizes all aspects of their learning, inspiring each student to reach their highest aspirations and be ready to confidently create their own successful future. The culture of innovation is about developing mindsets, processes, and tools that support staff in bringing ideas to practice. Even though we are no longer technically an innovation zone, the designation that was the foundation that allowed us to cultivate the innovative mindset that continues to carry us forward today. It has uniquely positioned our district to maximize the learning opportunities for our learners, even as they move between in-person, hybrid, and distant learning models. Our learners and families actually have had distant learning opportunities in the past 7 years, both planned and unplanned, and gave us the opportunity when we shifted to distance learning last spring to know some of those pinch points and to organize ourselves to provide the support that families needed and also the structure to help our students continue to move forward. As we designed different learning opportunities throughout the district, we soon realized that current accountability structure around seat time and attendance was a significant barrier. We know every learner has unique needs and learns at a different pace, and seat time is not an indicator of engagement, participation, or even learning. This legacy way of thinking about instructional time and attendance were major barriers for our staff as they had to overcome these as they began to design learning differently. Looking at one-to-one small group support with staff, learning outside the classroom, and even learning outside the school day. Our focus shifted to ensuring each learner has the educational services defined as equitable learning opportunities and supports that prepare each student to possess the knowledge, skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives through, again, that high quality instruction and personalized learning experiences. Other things that we learned, in addition to the challenges of seat time structures and accountability, we knew that putting a new learning design plan together with old metrics would only draw us back into that old system that did not serve each student well. Districts must have time to identify the metrics that will measure the new learning design and be allowed to incorporate not only the measurables, but also what learners are able to demonstrate and what we are able to observe in our learners. I think we would all acknowledge that skills such as time management, workflow management, self-advocacy, and creative critical thinking are essential if our learners are going to create their own successful futures. Essentially, the learner sets their own goals, sets the path to achieve those goals with support of staff. The difficulty in determining good indicators of these crucial skills and then effective metrics to measure growth objectives is that it takes time to figure out what those are. It took us significant time to identify the skills within each of our learner profiles and the indicators, and we are finally at a point after 3 years where we can begin to gather data around each. Here is what our learners report no matter what they do after they graduate. They feel better prepared for the next step than the peers they are with. As a district, we knew we would need to communicate our intent and report our process differently if we wanted to continue to move forward in our strategic direction. With this in mind, we created a district scorecard and dashboard to share a holistic picture of the work across our district and truly measure what matters. This provides us with the opportunity to tell our story and focus on the spectrum of the work of our learners. The Innovation Zone bill is an opportunity for districts to choose to begin to think differently about learning design. It allows districts to continue to improve on what has worked for their learning while simultaneously investigating different ways to serve each learner. It allows districts to step away from the what we have always done. If we truly want to impact positive change, we need to provide staff time to think differently. How you think will impact what you think, which will then impact behaviors. And this seems to be backwards of how we have gone about things in education from the beginning of time. The original Innovation Zone pilot project allowed us that time and space to begin to think differently in Farmington area schools, which has led to a much different and more impactful instructional design for our learners. I firmly believe this process should be available to any district in the state that would like to engage in this work. And if the plan is accepted, it should be accepted as a whole with the support of our Department of Education. The true intent of this bill should be carried forward, allow districts to develop individual plans to better serve each learner in their district, and work in partnership with MDE to remove the barriers of the barriers to a better design of learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Berg. So far, this is inspiring and fascinating. Next up, we have Miss Payne from Montemita Board Chair. And then what we'll do, Senator Isaacson, we'll take questions for the first 5 testifiers, and then we'll go to the last 2 that kind of cover a little different area. So with that, Ms. Payne, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Chamberlain, members of the committee, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to come speak to you today. I'm Dr. Lucy Payne. I'm a member of the Minnesota School Board Board of Directors, the chair of the Montemita School Board, a faculty member at the University of St. Thomas, and a parent. Montemita School District enrolls approximately 3,300 students and is on the northeast edge of the Twin Cities. Senator Chamberlain and Senator Uyghur's districts both include parts of our school district. At St. Thomas, I work with teacher candidates and experienced teachers. I'm honored to be here with great colleagues from Rochester, St. Louis Park, and Farmington. In each of my roles in the public education system, I see a great need for personalized, innovative education that allows for flexibility of time and space. Even in my own family, I understand the importance of personalized education. My own children have very different learning passions and needs. My daughter is now in college as a theater major, while my son is passionate about physics and engineering. My daughter was able to navigate our current model school, while my son in the last 2 years has attended a charter school, a private school, and a public school, searching for a model schooling that works for him. I've discovered that, though they differ quite a bit, they are both often frustrated for different reasons by what we label as seat time or instructional minutes, or in Minnesota statute 120A.41, hours of instruction. And so I'm here today to talk specifically about instructional time as a way to allow more flexibility for districts to meet the needs of learners. Time is one of our most important resources in education. Learning is difficult work that takes time to accomplish. Our current definition of instructional hours or seat time can be a barrier to considering new and innovative teaching and learning models that work for every student in our district. The state's current definition of instructional hours puts time as the focus rather than student engagement and student learning. Redefining instructional hours is one important way to provide local control and needed flexibility to support all learners. In the 2018-2019 school year, Montemita Public Schools adopted a new strategic plan. This work was done with close to 100 individuals, including students, teachers, parents, administrators, and community members. As we think about the implementation of our strategic plan, there are at least 3 strategies impacted by instructional hours. These are that we will define learning and teaching without barriers. We will provide students opportunities to draw out and pursue their passions. And we will foster reciprocal relationships of learning experiences for all students with civic, service, and community groups. Without a change to the definition of instructional hours, we will face barriers in the implementation of our strategic plan and what our community envisions for our learners. A revision to the language and statute would allow us and other districts to expand how we engage students in learning. We see instructional hours or seat time as an antiquated methodology that actually inhibits efforts to create equitable and meaningful learning experiences for our students. We believe students learn at different rates and in different formats and environments. Learning varies by student and by content area. Instructional hours by themselves is like punching a time clock in a factory. We strive to move beyond a factory-based schools model and need to have flexibility in order for that to happen. Students need to build agency to take control of their learning and build a work ethic that will support them in college and career. I believe we can start to make needed changes and encourage local innovation by redefining seat time or instructional hours beyond just instruction to include student engagement for greater flexibility. Our current definition of instructional hours can limit the opportunities we offer students in areas such as internships and service learning. These are opportunities where students are deeply engaged in learning and application of knowledge. As we think of the future of learning in schools, we need to build a system where trust, encourage, and empower school boards, superintendents, and educational professionals to meet the needs of learners as they meet the Minnesota academic standards. Superintendents and school professionals have the professional knowledge and experience, whereas school boards know their communities, so together they can create opportunities that are best for their students. This gives them the ability to make decisions for their local districts and learners with guide rails set by statute and rule. We know that well-designed project-based learning, work-based learning, service learning, internships, and other experiences provide learning opportunities that benefit students far more than seat time in a classroom. We know there are many ways students learn, and engagement is key in that learning process. Districts need to have the option to create the best learning environments and experience based on their student populations, needs, and passions. A redefinition of instructional hours will allow districts to have flexibility and local control to create learning experience and environments that will be more engaging for students, and not when and how long they are physically present in a school building or course. We believe that if we want to create more equitable learning environments, help students be more successful in school and beyond, and more self-directed and engaged learners, we need to create spaces for students to meet or demonstrate the standards in particular areas without being in a seat or building for a prescribed amount of time. We see this as focusing on the learning, meaning we don't hold students back, and we can create better and more accessible ways to help students support students who may need it. Ultimately, we want the statute to be clear that districts have the flexibility to do this work without having to ask for a waiver. In the fall of 2020, the Monument High School Board approved a resolution on instructional hours to take forward to the Minnesota School Board Association Delegate Assembly. The MSBA Delegate Assembly is a representative group of school board members from across the state that sets the legislative priorities for MSBA. This resolution was based on a resolution put forth by Lakeville Public Schools in 2018 when Senator Duckworth was the school board member. He and I spoke on the phone in the fall about the resolution. In December, the Delegate Assembly adopted the resolution around instructional hours. A majority of the delegates supported a change in instructional hours in statute. In summary, we know every learner has unique needs and learns at a different pace. Seat time is not an indicator of engagement, participation, or learning. During the 2021 school year, we have been provided new flexibility in our educational service design as we define instructional hours in person, synchronously in a distance learning environment, and asynchronously. We need time to study successful hybrid distance learning examples and models. We don't want to snap back to what was. We have the opportunity to lead the redesign of education for our future. Based on research of other states and experiences, we wish to maintain the day and hour requirements of a school calendar while extending the flexibility of counting instructional hours by hours of educational services. Utah has defined educational services as providing learning opportunities and services designed to support a student to be prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives, including by providing high-quality instruction for each student, personalized learning supports for each student, and implementation of evidence-based student health and wellness practices. This would then allow districts and professional educators to continue to rethink and expand our accountability model for a student-centered, competency-based education system in our state. Districts and educators could build systems to evaluate performance assessment in a high-quality and reliable manner across the state. With a change, districts could expand service learning, project-based learning, internships, community learning partnerships, and more. A redefinition of instructional hours expands learning opportunities for students. While we don't view a redefinition as a mandate for change in practice, it would allow for flexibility in practice that will lead to innovation. Districts could continue with their current model as they explore what is best for their students. If there's one thing that COVID has taught us, is that we must remain flexible and innovate to weather future large and small educational disruptions. Making the change to the definition of instructional hours would help allow school districts to have the flexibility needed to meet the needs of learners and begin to think about redesign of our systems, no matter the disruption. Thank you again for allowing me to come speak to you today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And did I miss, is it Dr. Payne?
It is, thank you.
We aim to give attribution when and where necessary and appropriate. Thank you. I find it all very interesting and fascinating. There's a lot of different opportunities there. So we're going to go to question. We have three members with questions. It's Senator Isaacson, Senator Kunish, Senator Swadinsky. So Senator Isaacson, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. One, and I apologize, I don't remember which superintendent said this, so whoever it was, could you speak up about doing 45-15, which I think means 45 days on or 9 weeks and then 3 weeks off. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then how does that work? Like, I'm very intrigued by this concept, and I've thought to myself on several occasions that's something we should be considering. But how does that work, like budgetarily? Does it come out in the wash pretty much the same throughout the year, or is there an increase or decrease? Do you realize the savings or more expense? How does that work with in comparison to whatever a quote unquote normal year is, whatever that means.
Yeah, the only
Superintendent.
really additional costs, excuse me. Yeah, the
Sorry,
only,
Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
No, Superintendent Munoz, go ahead.
all right, thank you. Sorry about that.
You're good.
No,
Yeah,
my fault. Sorry.
The only additional cost we really see is a little bit in transportation when we're transporting those students when the other students aren't being transported. But as far as number of teacher days, it's the same amount of days.
Oh, okay.
So really, it's just the same amount of days stretched out throughout the entire school year. And the 15 days are not only provide some break, but it's also an opportunity to bring in those students that maybe be struggling a little bit more to do some additional teaching during that break time.
Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair,
Superintendent. Senator Isaacson?
one more question, and any of the superintendents can speak up to this if you'd like. So I'm a parent of 3 children, one that's in 1st grade, one in kindergarten, and one that thinks that she's 14, but she's only 4. And I am managing them at home while I do this and be a professor. And one of the things that we learned almost immediately with my son who's in 1st grade was that the entire class, after missing part of last year, was behind in reading. And this is in Shoreview at Island Lake Elementary School. And so obviously since that, since I learned that a few months ago, I began to ask a lot of questions, and we're seeing data come out showing that a lot of people are going to be really behind because of this COVID crisis, and that the more folks, or the more you look at certain demographics, it gets even more exaggerated, almost exponentially, it seems, with some groups. And so I'm wondering if any of you were to just spitball a solution here, like what would you say would be the way to handle? And I know we're talking about a much bigger thing about getting schools together, but I'm interested in understanding, and since you're here, who would want to posit an answer of how would we help fix the problem now specific? And I know it's also long-term, because it's not like we're just fixing a systemic problem for a second, but it's just exacerbating a systemic problem. How could we do something in the next 6 months to a year? And what would that look like in a school system to help begin to solve that problem of just everybody being behind because of the pandemic?
Well, which superintendent would like that? Osai or Berg? Who would like that?
Mr. Berg was nodding a lot. I feel like I'm going to call on him. I'm a professor, so that's very natural for me just to call on people. You won't be graded though.
Superintendent Berg, and then if there's another superintendent would like to jump in, please let us know. Thank you. Go ahead, Superintendent Berg.
I'll give you my personal opinion, right? I mean, I think with all the shifting of models and, the digital piece of things and all the other stuff that goes with it, I think the focus needs to be to try to continue to move kids forward from where they are right now. I'll give you my other opinion. A lot of the stuff that we have created in schools is artificial of where kids should be at certain times. They help us identify potentially where gaps are, and we most certainly close that. I can tell you that the conversations we're having in our district is that, hopefully if and when we're able to return to something that looks more normal, we are going to have to reorganize to our learners. We're going to have to be able to be flexible enough that when our learners return to us, that 3rd grade classroom isn't going to be able to look like a traditional 3rd grade classroom. We're going to have to account, organize, do a really good job on the front end to figure out where kids actually are, and then be willing to organize much differently than we currently have. Now that sounds great sitting in a committee meeting right now, talking with everybody, because you're going against, years and years and years of traditional organizing. But I think that the simple answer is you organize to learning where kids are at, and not just simply by, birth dates and things like that. And you continue to focus on increasing and moving kids forward, and where needed, accelerate that growth and focus it that way. And so those are the things that we're starting to talk about, because I think we will see a significant amount of stress on the system if our kids return and we treat them like a traditional 3rd grader or 4th grader, or we feel like we have to make up for probably a year and a half of lost time in 6 or 7 months. And not, again, that we don't need to continue to close those gaps. We most certainly do, but it's going to take some significant time. And I think you can only do that through reorganizing to what your learners present you, and not simply reorganizing to what we've always done as adults. And So maybe one of the other superintendents has a better answer, but that's kind of what we're talking about and thinking about here.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick follow-up when the other ones are done talking.
Chair Chamberlain.
You're on mute, sir.
Yes, I'll jump in. The Superintendent Munoz from Rochester. We've been working with Dr. Bill Daggett the last couple of years, and once the pandemic hit, we had to shift our focus a little bit with working with him. And one of the things we learned from the research that his organization has done is that you really have to do two things. One, you have to prioritize the standards. There's no way you can go back and capture all the standards from that year and then also start focusing next year on the next grade standards. So prioritizing those standards and then really focusing on the ones that focusing on the ones that really students need, for example, in second grade to be successful as a third grade reader, for example. That, and then we're also having conversation on how we can re-envision how we do summer school. We know it's going to have to be different than we've done it in the past. So we are having conversations on how summer school should look to address what you asked us about.
And then Chair Chamberlain, I can also add a perspective to the question from Senator Isaacson as well. And I appreciate the question. As a father of a second grade student here in St. Louis Park Public Schools, I certainly understand the demand of doing my job and also trying to make sure there's some continuity in his educational experience. And, as I think about the question, I've heard that a lot, and as part of my testimony, I shared an example of where we actually are seeing students growing, right? So I think the first thing that we have to do as educators is truly understand where our students currently are and not base that on things that we believe should be occurring because of the disruptions that have occurred during this time. So what we're currently seeing is that although we've been in distance learning, and because we've, tried to keep the focus on creating engaging and learning environments in a distance learning format that first and foremost see children for who they are and then really support them in their growth and development, that we've been able to continue to see growth in reading. But I certainly recognize that as we come back in the fall, there will be students who maybe do have gaps, right? And it'll be really critical that at that time that we don't create this robust intervention or remediation structure, which will only diminish the hope and excitement and learning and joy for our children, right? So as we come back, certainly there's going to be a need for some gaps to be closed in certain situations. But I believe the most important way to do that is through creating opportunities for students to strengthen in those areas of standard through content areas, right? So thinking about creative ways to use the arts, music, physical education, whatever it is, wherever those interests lie for our students, utilizing those avenues as ways to reinforce those reading skills that maybe were lost during this process. One of the things that we're looking at right now in St. Louis Park Public Schools is really trying to re-envision and think about the way that we provide reading support or intervention to students. For far too long in public education and education in general, we've created this deficit model where if you have not met a particular standard at the time in which we believe you should have met it, then we create these separate but equal, right, spaces for kids to go and learn how to read or kids to go and learn how to do math. And all of those spaces have done year after year is just diminished the hope of our children. So we're really trying to shift that model on its head. And we're thinking about creating, what would it look like for school districts, right, to have enrichment specialists, right? To where as part of their specials that they would go to at the elementary level, that they would go into a place that would really celebrate them for the brilliance that they bring to the classroom, recognizing that each of our students bring different gifts, recognizing them for the brilliance that they bring to the classroom, and then really starting to promote those areas of brilliance, leaning into different standards in math and reading. So I would suggest, Senator Isaacson, certainly we don't have it clearly outlined yet, but what I would suggest is that what we can't do is do what we've done traditionally, which is create these spaces of remediation, drill and kill, which only diminish the hope of our children.
Thank you, Superintendent. Senator Isaacson would like to move on, but if you get a quick something.
Yeah, I want to just address something they said just real quick, and that is the idea. I'm not surprised that some students might be doing well because we all have different learning styles, and that learning style might appeal to one student that wouldn't normally do well in another setting. Overall, though, it appears to me that we're not seeing people are excelling, and I really am in tune with what Superintendent Berg was saying. This idea of meeting the students where they're at has got to become the rule. In order, if we're going to find them and bring them to where we need them to be, we can't expect them all to be in a certain spot. And I hope that approach is the approach we're looking at in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Isaacson. Senator Kunish.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your work and your dedication to our students. Superintendent's job is not an easy one, this I know. And I myself am a former teacher. I was a library media specialist for 25 years. And at two different opportunities, I was able to work in one of those 45, 15-day, we called it year-round classes or year-round year of education. And personally, I loved it, absolutely loved it. When you talk about, having those 15 days to refresh yourself, students were refreshed, teachers were refreshed, but also teachers had that opportunity to maybe earn a little bit more money or continue their dedication to their students by providing those additional interim classes. So just to let you know, Superintendent Munoz, I really, really do, I'm a supporter of that school schedule. But my question for you is, during this COVID pandemic, have you been able to continue your schedule as it is? And the fact that there's a 15-day break in between there, and of course there's weekends. Do you feel that might mitigate any contagion viruses down the road, that we might be able to maintain a regular school schedule, giving that 15-day break?
Superintendent Munoz.
Yes, they were actually the first school this fall that started. They started back in July. So we actually used them. We started our elementary at the hybrid model, and they were able to help us work out some of the kinks that we needed to know before we rolled it out district-wide. But we have been able to maintain that calendar. And you're correct, as we have a COVID advisory team with public health representation and a physician from Mayo Clinic. And that's a comment they made, that having that 15-day window would potentially could be a positive, or could also be a negative, that if, depending on what that student and that family did during that 15-day break, because some of our families use that 15 break as a time to take a vacation. And obviously the pandemic kind of might have limited some of that travel, but we have seen it as a positive. And yes, we have been able to maintain that same schedule during the pandemic in a hybrid model.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Superintendent Munoz.
Thank you.
Any quick follow-up, Senator
Yep.
Kunish?
So this one is for Superintendent Osei. You talked about expanding online distance learning, which I think is also a very fabulous idea, because students really do have their own unique ways of learning and maintaining information. Would you imagine that you would have two different sets of staffs, teachers that are in classroom only, and then perhaps an expanded staff that would do distance and online learning only? Or would you have the expectation that a classroom teacher would continue to juggle both of those responsibilities?
Yeah,
Superintendent Osei.
Thank you for the question. And we would look at these being two separate teachers. So at the elementary level, for example, we would like to run a distance learning academy that families could choose to opt into, where there would be a dedicated teacher that would teach those sections. And then at the secondary level, we would offer courses either in the blended learning or online format, which would be taught by a separate teacher. So as we move forward, like, a teacher wouldn't be asked to teach students in front of them and then those virtually as well, which I know has been a challenge as we've shifted over the past 12 months.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Senator Kunish. We're going to have to keep moving. We have to,
Yep.
Senator Swedinsky and Senator Duckworth have a question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kunish. Senator Swedinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having taught for 33 years in the classroom, the brick and mortar what I used to call the cells and bells isn't where all learning does take place. And so all of these ideas and creativity and innovation that you guys have been talking about today has been a breath of fresh air. I appreciate it. The one concern I have is I'm not sold yet on distant learning at home. It used to be called homework for a reason, because it was supposed to be something in addition to what happened within the cells and bells. And while we talk about innovation and creativity, if the end game is that the student is going to be shadowing a state senator or cutting down buckthorn in the local park, or heading over to the senior citizen center to read to people, or helping out at a daycare facility. If that's what we mean by innovation and creativity, then I'm full on board. But I'm really nervous about kids doing their schoolwork at home. As all of you said today, I think that the silver lining of COVID is we're going to start realizing there's more to our youth than just academics. And the emotional needs of our kids and the social needs of our kids have kind of taken a back seat in recent years to the academic testing that seems to be driving education today. And all of you today talking about your innovative ideas and your creative ideas, I hope we continue along this path, because the American system of education, no one thinks is truly perfect. But boy, I tell you, it's pretty good. It's produced some amazing, amazing people. But the only concern I have so far today, along with, but thank you for making me think, is, and so it's not really, and my question for any of you that want to take it, if I went into any of your high schools or junior highs or grade schools, and I surveyed the teachers, the people actually doing all the work, what would they say about some of the innovative ideas that you guys are presenting as superintendents today? Are they on board with some of these ideas, or are they sitting at home right now watching and shaking their heads? And no one's asked me what I think about this stuff. So anyways, thanks for coming in today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Swedinsky. Now, I'll caution everybody. We do want to move on. So Superintendent Berg had his hand up, and I'll just ask Superintendent, try to be brief with this, because I've got one more senator with a question and comment, and we have two more testifiers. So Superintendent Berg, you had your hand up to respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2 points. So I think if we look at how COVID has changed our work environment, I think we most certainly need to provide our learners opportunities to work from home in different settings. If we don't give our learners that opportunity with support, I don't think we're setting them up to find success in the future. Now, again, does that need to be 100% all the time for everybody? No. But ultimately, if we want our kids to be good decision makers, especially about their learning, we have to give them opportunities to manage their workflow, manage their time and things like that, and understand that they're kids and they're going to make some mistakes, and build support for that. To your question about our staff, I think the one thing that we've tried to do, and what I think maybe some people that have come and visit us would say, and how we would describe ourselves, is we're very organic. Superintendent Osai hit it on the head. If we truly want to flip the system on its head, we need to switch from a deficit system to a system that focuses on strengths, and that includes our staff. I mean, if we want our staff to engage with our learners based on their strengths, then we need to engage with our staff on their strengths. And so we need to give them, we use the term honor their agency. We need to give them that opportunity to determine what that learning environment looks like, how they can best meet the needs of the students within a framework. And what I think our staff would say is that they love it. They probably found more joy in their work in the last 9 years because they have the opportunity to determine what that is and what that looks like. And what I would say, from being an assistant principal to a principal in our high school to our superintendent, is they're working way harder. And I'm counting the pandemic because that goes without saying, but they were working way harder prior to that because it was their work. They had the choice, they had the opportunity. And just like anything, when we get to choose based on things that we are passionate about, excited about, then they'll go to all ends to do that. So, and I would assume that would echo in the other districts as well.
Thank you, Superintendent. And thank you, Senator Swedinsky, the good insight. Thank you. Senator Duckworth, you had a question, comment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'll be brief. First off, I appreciate the message coming from the superintendents and others regarding flexibility and choice at the local level. But my question is for Superintendent Berg. First off, it's good to see you. We've had a lot of strong representation out of the Farmington School District in this committee already this year. It's very much appreciated. I understand we have little ones in Farmington back in classrooms as of this week, which is exciting news. You and your peers are boots on the ground, and Farmington being one of the first districts to have kids back in the classroom in this capacity. I'm curious to hear from you how it's going, and then also how we think, in your estimation, we can set those same kind of conditions to begin to welcome our middle schoolers and our high schoolers back as well, safely, of course.
Yeah.
Try to be as brief as you can. Thank you.
I'll be really brief. How's it going? Awesome. Right? I mean, it was like the first day of school again. And it was like they were moving in for college, right? They had so much stuff that they were bringing back and things. I think like anything during this pandemic, our staff was apprehensive. They needed some time to kind of come to, their own realization around some of the new safety protocols and kind of get prepared for that. But I think those planning days help with that. And then, once you get the kiddos in and away you go, it feels like normal with some of those new safety protocols in place and things like that. So, it'll be interesting to see, right? When we shifted to distance learning in November, we had seen not what I wouldn't call spread throughout our buildings, but operationally, we just couldn't handle it anymore with the number of students that we had in quarantine, the number of staff that we had in quarantine. So I think we're going to kind of watch with a close eye to see what happens as we introduce those kids, and then how that can apply to our secondary and our high school students. We're meeting with our regional support team and trying to formalize plans to potentially bring kids back, mid to late February, hopefully, if things can kind of track the way they go. So.
Thank you. Superintendent Berg. Senator Duckworth, any additional follow-up?
No, sir. Thank you both.
Thanks. So to the 5 previous testifiers, you're certainly welcome to stay. We're going to move on to another small segment. We have 2 testifiers there, but in case any of you had to leave or jump off, I just want to say it is truly inspiring. It fills me with hope because, believe me, sitting up here in this particular spot, while I'm not in the classroom, I certainly appreciate what all of you are doing and thinking and saying. But being up in this spot, you hear a lot of negative stuff and a lot of frustrating things. So it's good to hear a different side of this and a different angle, and hopefully to scrub politics out of this whole process. That's not going to be completely possible, obviously, but to the extent possible, find these areas of agreement that will be best for our kids and not best for any of us or best for any political party or best for any adult, but what's best for those kids and what works best. And what I've heard from all of you and Ms. Hinton at the beginning is that there's definitely hope, and it's very inspiring on top of, it's been a good day so far, so let's not ruin it the rest of the way. So with that, thank you very much. And in case you jump off, we certainly appreciate it. And thank you for your time and the efforts and the challenges you're facing. With that, we have 2 more testifiers from Serve Minnesota. Start with Kate Kelly. Then we're going to go to Dr. Pete Nelson. So, Kate Kelly, you're up to bat. Welcome to the committee. State your name.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Kate Kelly, and I am the regional president for PNC Bank and serve as the board chair for Serve Minnesota. Serve Minnesota administers AmeriCorps, which is also referred to as the Domestic Peace Corps, for the state and is recognized nationally for our proven innovative programs. Innovation is a guidepost for our work since we became a nonprofit in 2002. We started out as part of the state government and got legislative approval to become a 501c3 with a board appointed by the governor. This has allowed us to be nimble and better leverage private funding. And that's where I come in. As board chair, I've seen firsthand the impact that Serve Minnesota is making on critical issues facing our state. And as someone familiar with education and the needs of our business community, I can tell you that Serve Minnesota represents the type of public-private effort we need to ensure a competent workforce for our future. What is most compelling to me as a business leader, and what makes it very easy to talk about the impact of their work, are three things. One, Serve Minnesota is data-driven with results to prove that it works. Two, they are cost-effective. Because of Serve Minnesota's ability to access federal dollars, our state receives more AmeriCorps funding than any other state in the nation except for California. Three, Serve Minnesota engages the private sector as partners. PNC Bank, as an example, has invested $1.2 million to help develop innovative solutions, including early math strategies that were then tested and taken to scale with state funding. This example of private-public partnership highlights the power that Serve Minnesota brings, a tool for the state legislature to solve unsolved problems. Our programs have been built from ground up using data to inform and improve our outcomes. Reading Corps is the nation's largest tutoring program, and Math Corps is not far behind. They are leading the way in terms of garnering state and federal support. And they do that because they're accelerating learning outcomes for our students who have historically struggled. And they adapted to the challenges of this current school year, providing the proven tutoring support to students in person and virtually to keep them on track. Helping students catch up is a huge return on investment for our state and is what gets me excited about this work. This happens because thousands of individuals give a year or more of service to their communities. There's nothing confusing about the value of the investment in these programs. People around the country are contacting us eager to replicate our results. By combining the power of AmeriCorps with proven practices means investments can quickly and efficiently be translated into successful implementation, wherever and whenever. In just the same way, Serve Minnesota was able to create emergency response initiative that responded to the impact COVID-19 had on communities across the state, with more than 300 AmeriCorps members serving in food insecurity, housing, tutoring, and older adult support. We thank the state legislature for being a tremendous partner for us over the years, investing in what works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Thank you very much. Next up, and we may come back to you for a question or two. Dr. Pete Nelson, are you here?
I am here.
Great. You got the floor.
Great, thank you. My name is Peter Nelson, and I'm the Director of Research at Serve Minnesota. And I thought I might also, I'm just going to quickly just go ahead and share some slides. And so, as Kate mentioned, Serve Minnesota is the state's AmeriCorps Commission. So as an organization, we leverage the committed people and resources of AmeriCorps to address our state's critical issues. Now, in the context of education, we're able to do this really well in Minnesota because of two core reasons. First, from design to scale, our programs are rooted in evidence. They have a direct line to empirical research. So this allows us to know that our AmeriCorps members do things that have a known value to kids, not just through testimonials, as we have those, but through hard data. Right? For example, both Reading Corps and Math Corps have support from two different randomized controlled trials each, showing that the programs produce an additional semester of math gains and between a semester and a year of literacy gains for students. In both of those studies, we saw the largest gains among students of color and EL learners. Second, it means we know how to create infrastructure around promising ideas to ensure that those ideas find their way into practice in an effective, meaningful, and replicable way. So in the case of Reading Corps, after an intensive week of training and practice, our tutors enter schools, materials in hand, ready to contribute as a full-time member of the school. And during the year, they're supported by two different coaches. There's an internal coach who helps integrate the tutor into the school, and a master coach serves as an expert in the evidence-based reading interventions that make up Reading Corps. Now, both coaches work together and with the tutor to individualize support for kids and ensure the program is delivered with fidelity. And, wrapped around all of this is the use of data. Our coaches and tutors are able to make accurate decisions about student need. We're able to figure out which students are best for us to work with when they're ready to be sort of graduated from that extra support. Because we have data on, for example, students' weekly literacy performance, along with information on the dosage that they're getting, the fidelity with which the tutors are implementing the program, attendance. All of that is integrated into our data management system and then displayed for tutors, for coaches, for other stakeholders in one place. So they can use that as sort of a decision-making framework. And that's important because that vision, I think the way that we operate has allowed us to be particularly resilient during the pandemic. So we've had schools in person, right? Schools sort of in person, schools fully online. And we knew that, from Deer River to Lakeville to Hutchinson, we knew we needed a pathway to support kids whenever, wherever. So we got to work creating an online training and an implementation infrastructure for Reading Corps tutors. It was an impressive amount of work with a huge payoff. So for us, it meant our tutors could continue their partnership with schools, with students, with families. And just today, we're serving thousands of kids right now. And some of them are at school, some of them are at home, some of them are going to flip back and forth. And in doing this work, we are also able to think, well, if we've got the online infrastructure, we can also offer this support direct to families. So that if you're a family and your student and your child is at a school that doesn't have Reading Corps or Math Corps and is looking for some extra support in either reading or math, we can work directly with the family. Right now we have over 1,000 families that have requested the tutoring. We have 300 tutors who are serving online. And so that's pretty exciting to us. We're an organization that's proven year after year that we can get the job done for our role as a capacity builder for schools. Our programs, both Reading Corps and Math Corps, they're in peer-reviewed journals. They're in best practice guides, national best practice guides. People call them out. And most importantly, we're recognized by our school partners as a game changer for kids. And I don't love it when we have to kind of say these things, but because I'm Minnesotan and boasting can make me feel uncomfortable occasionally. But I felt the need to do it now because we are really in to get to, I think it was Senator Isaacson's note. We're in a really important time because we kind of know what we're facing. And there are a lot of we heard some of it today, really great examples of schools doing online learning while being innovative. But with a shift to online and hybrid models of learning, there is going to be a decrease in opportunities to learn, interactions between kids and other caring adults, and opportunities to receive feedback. And these are things that drive learning. It doesn't matter the content. Like that, those are the characteristics that drive learning. And it's going to affect everyone's achievement. But it's really going to affect students who are growing up in under-resourced homes. So opportunities always matter. But I think now more than ever, we need to find ways to create opportunities for kids. Every moment that we can get our tutors in front of kids matters. It matters now, it's sort of in this moment for our young learners in the state, but it's going to matter even more later as their academic trajectories begin to take shape. We are so excited and grateful to be part of our state's effort to meet the educational needs of students. And we hope to continue to be a partner in this work. And to that end, we want to extend an appreciation to Rep. Uyghur's bill 64 that contains an increase in Reading Corps and Math Corps funding. Again, thank you very much for having us. And it's our pleasure to kind of share a bit about what we've been doing during this pandemic. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. I have a quick question. So you have 300 tutors out there. Does that mean, do those tutors handle one child or a couple kids on a daily basis? How does that work?
So they are handling a larger caseload than one. A typical tutor is going to be working with about 24 students. And some of those students might be in person, some of those students might be online. So there are tutors that are providing in-person support, but also then providing online direct-to-family support. The online support is primarily one-to-one for reasons that you might sort of intuitively get. And the in-person is in either individualized, so one-to-one, or delivered in pairs. In the case of Math Corps, groups of 3. And these are all things that we've sort of vetted from a data standpoint, knowing what happens when you do things in a pair? What happens when you do things in a group of 3? What do you see to achievement when you do those kinds of things? So those are things that we're tracking as an organization.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, so you're handling several thousand students and tutoring. And secondly, do you approach the schools, or the schools approach you, or how does that work?
It's a little bit of both. Schools will reach out to the programs to request that kind of support, or the support from our programs, and we also will actively recruit. And so right now we have over 1,000 tutors that are actually working. It's not just that 300. And so they're kind of everywhere. And the conversations with the school are largely around need. We recognize that we want to be in the schools where serving kids that might need that support quite a bit. And so we reach out and we get a sense for the overall need in the school. And if there is a need, meaning that there are students that are going unserved that need additional supports within the school district or within a particular school, that's kind of a sweet spot for us in terms of partnership.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Senator Kunesh, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And first I have to do a quick shout out to Kate Kelly. Kate Kelly and I graduated together way back in the day, so good to see your face on the screen. But I do just want to express my support and my appreciation for AmeriCorps. Within the school that I worked in, I was a library media specialist, and when we received employees from AmeriCorps, both in reading and math corps, we carved out a space for them. And so I saw firsthand for a number of years the kind of quality of education and support that those students were receiving. And it's not just the lessons that they are receiving, but the AmeriCorps and Reading Corps staff really build relationships with those students. So these are students that are already in some way struggling and looking for that extra boost. And when they have one more adult that is sitting down in a small group, or 2 or 3, as you mentioned, they build a bond, they build a team, and they build a support system that is very unique to that little bit of time in the school day, as well as outside. And I've seen many an adult that is working within those Reading and AmeriCorps who really took a unique interest in a certain student and really made that difference. So we can look at the data, we can look at test scores and that sort of thing, but please don't discount the social, emotional contribution to a student that these programs also provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kunesh. Senator, Dr. Nelson, you have any final comment regarding that?
Well, I'll just second that. And, I mentioned that we are a very data-driven organization, and that is a particular area that we've always sort of hesitated on trying to capture that relationship piece, because it weighs heavily on us. You have to really weigh the value. I mean, we believe in assessment, but you want to use it, right? And we don't want to take up time from the actual tutoring to try to gather information about that relationship. But that is what we hear from our tutors. It's what we hear from principals and teachers, that the relationship is driving the work. And again, for everyone here, you think about when you work hardest, you do it for people you like and for people you have a relationship with. And I think that the tutors do a really great job of that. So it is that type of relationship building is also embedded into that training they receive before they enter the school or enter their learning environment, wherever that might be.
Thank you, Doctor. Senator Uyghur, you had a question, comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for the great partnership, stepping up business. That's what we need, and the return on investment. Dr. Nelson, I was wondering if you have any data on the tutors that may have gone on to become teachers, paraprofessionals, reading specialists. Is there anything that might be further done for that type of pathway.
Was
Yes.
that Dr.
Sorry.
Nelson?
Yeah, so we do know that there are a large number of members that are thinking about their experience in Reading Corps and Math Corps as a pathway into education. It's a really great introduction for many of them. As you know, and we've got, again, we're not just talking about, a lot of people think about AmeriCorps members as sort of gap year people, but you know, the age range is 18 to 85, and the average age is mid 30s. And so there's all sorts of reasons why people come to schools. And I think a predominant motivation is service, of course, but also an interest in education. So you can go out and you can find schools where, you know, 25%, 30% of the staff, the teaching staff, are Reading Corps or Math Corps alums. And it's a great sort of incubator for the schools to get a sense for, hey, this person's really great. I want to think about them for my district, and for the members to think about, is a school the right place for me? And we have really kind of gotten better about tracking that information. It's always tough when we talk about like what happened to them 5-10 years later, but we're now in a better position to start articulating that. And so I'll also follow up with Audrey Suker and some other folks that serve Minnesota, and we can probably share out also some actual data on kind of the career pipeline piece to these programs. So thanks for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Senator Uyghur, anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chair, actually, it relates to the earlier testifiers, but not with this panel.
Oh, okay. Did you have a question for one of the superintendents, Senator Uyghur, if they're still here?
With the school board chair, Dr. Payne.
Dr. Payne, you still here? I don't see her, Senator Uyghur. I think she might have jumped.
Okay, I'll get back to her. She had posed about instructional hours, asked about a redefinition. I wanted to see if they had one that they were going to propose to us.
Thank you, Senator.
And one item first, I'll think about as we look at breaking barriers and what we can do. For the 25 years that I've been in the Senate, I still have not seen us, pass a bill to have a pre-Labor Day start. So,
you know what?
Something to think about.
Yeah, we're not going to argue that one today.
Okay.
But
there are some exceptions. I know if there's construction, et cetera. Okay.
I know. Thank you, Senator Uyghur. Hey, I just have a kind of an aside note, kind of a little thing of mine. Don't take offense, anybody, but for years, so no offense, Senator Uyghur, for years on this committee that I've sat on it for 10 years, we quite often use the term ROI most frequently when the former Fed chair of the district was here, and assets. I know those are easy terms to use, and maybe some think it's appropriate. I just don't like to, again, I'm not criticizing anybody. I just don't see kids as an ROI or as an asset thing. I see them, we all would see them as sentient beings with a consciousness and self-worth and everything else. So that's just my own little pet peeve. I don't think of them as ROI and assets. Secondly, we got old language in a couple of these proposals. We're going to have to work with some folks if we want to get this stuff in, for some language on the other three. So we will endeavor to do that. Ms. Dozlin is not here. I think she left the call. She might be watching on the stream. We'll have to work on getting some language. Finally, two final things. Thanks again. They're not here, but I think this was great testimony. Some smaller things, some bigger things, but they all make a difference, from the superintendents and Dr. Payne, and from Ms. Kelly and Dr. Nelson. Interesting stuff. I found it very interesting and engaging. It's not always easily said on this committee, or an HHS for that matter, or tax. So I found it interesting and engaging in areas we can agree on outside of the politics. And again, we thank the commissioner for coming in and still looking for ways to get kids in, and we'll keep working towards that end. So with that, members, I will say that we will have a hearing on Monday about something as interesting. That will be social media mental health. Not sure what we got up for Wednesday yet, but Monday will be social media and mental health issues. So with that, members, thank you very much for your time, attention, and to the testifiers that remain. We are now adjourned. Thank you.